Welcome everyone, daily.dev episode number 35. So we are almost at the end of 2023. It seems almost impossible, but it's true. So today we'll talk about Iceland architecture, and we have amazing guests here. I met just one of them in person, so I'll let you guess first of all who is the person I met. And so I see people here. We have people in the chat, of course, Caitlin and other people. Nice. First of all, sound check, and then I think that we can start soon. Are you there? Sound check.
Hello.
Perfect.
Hi, how's it going?
Hey, check.
Perfect. Nice. Okay, nice. So, quick recap of how this does work. So we have 1 hour and a half to stay together. We have this short intro, then we have 3 amazing speakers, 30 minutes each, and at the end we also make a conclusion. So if you can stay after your talk until the end, I'll invite you again. Otherwise, it's okay. It's the same. So that's it. And yes, before starting, you can just check daily.dev. This is a free event, 100%. You can support this video. I think I'll make a tweet soon. And yes, that's it. We have also new features called Squad. You can check that in the pinned chat. And yes, nice, amazing, perfect. Nice. So I think that we can start. And so we'll start with Caitlin. And then in 30 minutes, we'll start with the second one. We should go Caitlin, Ben, and Misko in this order. Okay? Perfect. Okay, nice. So let me remove Ben and Misko. Caitlin. Okay, nice. Okay, so we can start. So you are the first of this episode. We have just a couple of minutes just to warm up. So please, Caitlin, introduce yourself and give us like a spoiler of what's your talk about. And when you're ready, I can also share the screen.
Okay. So I am. Someone's talking about the whiteboard, y'all. Okay. I am a software engineer. I am a designer. I am a conference speaker that loves to nerd out on accessibility. I'm also editor for the Design Tokens community group, and I am the creative director for the Cross Sisters Network. That means I try to get women on bikes to race cyclocross. And I also am known for racing really slowly, wearing costumes, which you will see, and doing some other fun things like outdoors and wrangling my cats. And you'll see a little bit more about that.
Nice.
Yeah.
We'll see this in the presentation,
yes.
probably.
Yes. And I said hand pink waving. I don't know what that means, but also someone might have seen like my talk at React Summit. I am the person that got no less than 6 speakers to wear inflatable costumes and join me on stage to do a design system carnival, and it's now become a meme about a framework family reunion.
Okay, now I want to check this. I'll check this
during. Yes, it's happened at well, the costume part has happened at React Miami, Clarity Design System Conference, and now at React Summit. Yes,
I was that close to come to React Miami. I went to Miami, but not for React Miami, but maybe next year. So I was that close.
Yeah, the first time I did the talk was at React JS Day Verona, and I didn't do the costumes that time, but this talk has evolved. But now, costumes have to happen because I do costumes, but now everyone has to wear costumes with me.
Perfect.
Because I'm Euro spicy, so everyone has to enjoy
I'm looking forward to come at a conference with you and wear a costume. So I still needed to unlock this achievement. Yes. So I made a talk with flip-flops, but not with an inflatable. So this is an achievement for next year. Caitlin, when you're ready, can we share your screen?
Just give me one moment.
Yes.
Let me get that started.
Mm-hmm.
I am ready.
Perfect. Okay, so the title is Bye Bye Weeds. digital gardening. Love it. I also, one of the secrets is that I do gardening. I don't share it much on social media, but I have a garden. So I like this. I love this title. And Kathleen, so I think you can get started. And if you have any question, just drop them in the chat. I'll still be in the chat. And at the end, we'll have 5 minutes.
Yes.
Q&A. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So best of luck. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. So welcome everybody. As Francesco has mentioned, I am Kathleen McMahon. I'm here to talk about by week digital gardening with Astro and MDX. So I want to thank, oops, my clicker is not working, which means my battery has finally died. So that's why I have accessibility, a spacebar. So I want to thank daily.dev for inviting me to speak at this event. My presentation will be available sometime after this talk on Notice. That's https://notist/resource11. And I will also post the full URL on Twitter, not X, I refuse to call it that, sometime after my presentation. You can follow me at resource11 on resource11 on Twitter, GitHub, and Instagram. But let's back up a little bit so I can introduce myself a bit better. So as I've said before, I'm an engineer, designer, and I like to speak about things. I'm an occasional cyclocross racer in costume, of course. I love setting up lights in my workspace. I love to go to the beach and collect sand dollars, every single one that I can find. And I love my cats, Thor and Otis. And ever since COVID came around, I have collected a ridiculous amount of crystals. And I try to photograph them, but Otis interferes often with opinions about where I should place my attention. Thanks, Otis. And Thor has learned to do the same, and he's very satisfied with himself. But who could resist them? I have worked on a few design systems like O'Reilly Media. I have worked on also design systems like Launch Darkly. And most recently, my last design system that I have worked on is Northwestern Mutual. And I love design systems. They're exciting work, especially if you like herding kittens. It's always fun with many moving parts. And part of a design system includes trying out different software stacks and choosing the best tool for your system, like Gatsby. Now, speaking of Gatsby and MDX, they are why I chose to build my digital garden site, kathleenmcmahon.dev, back in 2020 when COVID hit. Right when I was laid off, right at the beginning of 2020. Now, you might be saying, what is a digital garden? So there's this blog post by Joel Hooks, and the phrase that he, if you look at this phrase, the phrase on this page makes sense to me. What makes a digital garden is interesting. It's personal. Things are organized and orderly, but with a touch of chaos around the edges. And I latched on to the idea of creating a digital garden and using Gatsby and MDX as my stack at the time for a few reasons. One, because I tend to love trying all the things, all the latest software, but at the same time, as a neurospicy person, I struggle with making progress over seeking perfection. And if I'm not careful, I lean towards making big Lexus bows versus tiny kitten bows. By the way, that is Thor as a kitten. So wow, I can hyper-focus on the details and make that perfectly crafted piece of software before shipping. That's heck on velocity. So the digital gardening format keeps me in that kitten bow mindset. Blog post gets written, new things get shipped. Fast forward a few years and a few talk listings and a Dependabot package updates later, and I noticed that my digital garden got a bit weedy, and Gatsby had versioned up to 5.3, and my site was on version 2.3 last fall. I considered an upgrade, and an industry colleague familiar with Gatsby, I asked them, how painful an upgrade would be. Of course, I already knew the answer. 3 major versions. Ouch. But I was going to ask anyway. And after asking and hear the expected answer, yes, it'll be a pain, the advice leaned towards the obvious. If it's JavaScript, it requires regular maintenance. Okay. Which turned into a suggestion to use Squarespace, since it didn't require maintenance. And that kind of sounded like JavaScript is hard. And maybe you're out of your league. And maybe you should create a Squarespace site. And did you say JavaScript was hard to me? So hello, Spike-driven development. By golly, I would upgrade this app 3 versions up. Squarespace my butt. So 10 hours later, I am still shaking my head about that Squarespace suggestion. 10 hours later, after sitting down for a serious Netflix binge and upgrade session, I come up for air. I've fixed all the GraphQL changes and was wrestling with the Gatsby image API, and now I'm questioning life choices. I was just like combining Jello with shellfish, deciding to go in, and it was not a great decision. And I thought, I literally have a 4-page static site. Why am I using a JavaScript framework to render 4 static pages in a blog? And why am I using JSX to create HTML when I could just use HTML? Granted, I work on design systems. I love creating component APIs, and I love using React. So I'm the last person to say, just throw it all out. But there are times when you need a 4-page site without throwing all this JavaScript at it, just to render something that's small, lean, performant, and just doesn't need a spa. Just doesn't need to be a spa when it needs to be a multi-page app. And the Gatsby of 2020 isn't the same as it is today. And that hot static site generator that everyone wanted to use has evolved into this suite of industrial farming equipment now. I don't need a combine machine when a hoe and rake will do for my needs. It was time to weed out the complexity and choose a new framework, one that will compile right down to HTML, CSS, and only serve the minimal amount of JavaScript if I need it. So I looked around, and because there is a bunch of options out there, oh, hi, Astro, let's take a look at you. So why did I choose Astro? Well, solid JS support. That's one thing, but let's go back a second. One, Astro is designed to be building content-rich websites. And I zeroed in on this particular paragraph. Blogs, portfolios. What am I working on? A 4-page site. I don't need a logged-in dashboard. I don't need complex native apps interactions for this use case that Next.js would give me. So this seems like a safe bet for what I'm doing right now. Astro has MDX support. I can add my MDX pages and move on. Sweet. Astro supports post CSS by default. So my current CSS setup will port right over without much fuss. Astro Islands. These are interactive UI components on the page that render in isolation using partial and selective hydration. Awesome. Why do I love this? Well, this allows me to import some of my React components from my Gatsby project. I can choose to convert them to Astro components over time or leave them as React components right in my project. So I can convert some of them or all of them. This is awesome. I can try out different frameworks like Solid.js, Vue, and without having to fully commit to one framework. And I can share state between all these different frameworks at once by integrating another package like NanoStore at like a global state level. It's pretty cool. Astro also uses multi-MPA architecture and server-side rendering versus a client-side single-page app. So it's performant. And I'm sure Ben Holmes is going to talk all about this stuff and all the awesome stuff later. And the configs are much leaner. Check this out. Here is Gatsby's project config on the left versus Astro's config on the right. In the Astro config, we have site deploy URL, markdown, integrations, image, and build configs, all in a small list. This is for my site. And the Gatsby config has all these post CSS imports, configs, site metadata, plugins, more plugins, more plugins to resolve. And the config keeps going and going and going and going. Oh, and here's the Gatsby node file for creating nodes because I didn't want to have blog posts under the source folder. I wanted to have a separate folder outside of the source folder so I could show that I'm really fancy and smart. Look at me go. Let me add unnecessary complexity. I had to create all these nodes and do GraphQL queries instead and make absolute paths to create the post. Yay! And here's a Gatsby browser file with this wrapper element so I could wrap my style components and pass them into MDX all at once to use them. That's a lot of stuff. Now, once I port my components over to the Astro project, there were some differences, like from React Children to Astro Slots. So here's a comparison. Here's Gatsby's layout page on the left versus Astro's layout page on the right. In the layout files, where we import Gatsby's components, a CSS module file, an MDX embed provider, and a use extra classes utility function in the layout use extra classes utility function. Now, in the layout Astro file, the components are now Astro components, and we use a CSS file. In the Gatsby layout, we use class names and this use classes utility for style concatenation. And in the Gatsby layout, we use children, the children prop, where in the Astro layout, we now use slots. Now that we've converted Astro layouts to Gatsby layouts to Astro layouts, we can now mulch in our content. So first, we can ditch all those GraphQL queries and add in Astro's content collections. Content collections are great for organizing content, validating your front matter, and providing automatic type safety for all your content. In Gatsby, I had this one query to grab images from a local folder, literally 6 images. This one query to grab 6 images. And this other query to grab images for my About page, to grab 2 images for my About page. Queries for my Write page, which is to grab all my blog posts and parse all the data into a readable format. That's a lot for a 4-page site. In comparison, Astro's content collections which was added in at Astro version 2, is much simpler. It allows you to organize your documents, validate front matter, and provide a content schema with type safety, with Zod, which is magic. And with content collections, you can also dynamically generate routes. You can create this slug Astro file and use the get collection function from the Astro content and get static paths functions and parse your data and pop it into your pages posts folder, and then use the get collection function to use the get collection function to grab your blog data, combine it with the get static paths function, and map the data for each of your posts. No more finagling post files, no more Gatsby create page nonsense. So much more straightforward. And type safe MDX using Zod, which is what? I mean, what is Zod anyway? Well, the official definition for Zod is a TypeScript first schema validation with static type inference, which is like, seems very official. Let's go back for that, right? But really what it means is Zod uses TypeScript to create schemas to help you validate your data. That is pretty cool. That helps people just keep your details in little boxes. I love that. So like combining collections with Zod, mind blown. But now that your content is defined and validated, it's time to plant new starters. So we can pull in new images, pull in some images using Astro's Images API. And the image API was released as stable in Astro 3, which replaced the original AstroJS image integration. And this API allows you to import any image from the source assets folder. And when you pop it in, and you pop any image into that, let me say this better. Slow down, because I get really excited about image optimization. The API allows you to import any image from the source assets folder. And when you pop it in and add the required alt attribute, and I love that the alt attribute is required with this API. And you pass in the image into the source attribute, Astro generates all these attributes under the hood for you as output: source, width, height, your decoding and loading, and your alt attribute on the DOM for you. This is amazing. And some of the things that were hard for me. Whoops, let's go back. Whoops. This, icons. This was tough for me. Icon conversions, and they were time consuming for me. So I had to convert Gatsby links to Astro links. And trying to use React Font Awesome. I really wanted to use it. So I had this link component, and I really, really, really wanted to use React Font Awesome because it has these accessibility benefits under the hood. And I was stuck for a week converting my link file. And I did not want to convert it from React to Astro. I finally did it. I finally figured it out. But no matter what I did, my icon would break because I couldn't get React Font Awesome to work. I couldn't integrate the component. And I ended up refactoring this link to Astro component using the Astro Iconify package. But what I did was I customized the icon SVG imports, and I optimized each SVG for accessibility because I only used a few SVGs rather than importing a whole library. So it was worth the pain, but in the end, net win using Astro here, converting this file from React to Astro. But what I learned from this, from converting my site to Astro, is naturally there is a big tension between big Lexispose and Kittenspose as I migrated my site to Astro. Also, one thing I learned is schemas can be tricky. When I first started learning tricky schemas, especially with dynamic imports with images, but it's gotten a little more stable, which is awesome. I also learned CSS load order is no joke. The way that you load your CSS in your Astro files is very important. But I've also run into a bug where some things that in my CSS architecture strategy, certain things that work in my local file, when they are compiled and deployed, certain things break. One particular class breaks when it deploys up in my deployed site, and it has to do with this OWL selector that I'm using, and I'm going to solve it because I'm using every layouts, Andy Bell's and Hayden Pickering's every layout CSS architecture, and I'm going to figure out why this one thing is breaking for me. So for some reason, Astro is really angry with me using OWL selectors in my CSS, and it's conflicting with the slug CSS file getting hoisted to the top of the stack in a deployed file, which I will try to show you in a demo. Also, the thing to know is please clean up your file cruft, because if you have any extra files in your data files, any extra like files that you have not cleaned up in any of your data that you're pulling in, Netfly deploys will fail. They will get really angry with you. So make sure you don't have any extra unused data, or Netlify will get really angry with you and will not deploy anything. Also, if you're using Astro 3.0.12 and you are doing view transitions and you have CSS architecture, you're using the OWL selector, view transitions will break when you're trying to use the back button. Because, and also, there was some bug with style sheets not unloading, but it has been fixed in version Astro 3.0.3 or above, because for me it didn't fix in 3.0.3, but I checked last night and they are better in Astro 3.6.1. So everything but this one class has been fixed. So all the back button functionality, all those styles are fixed, except for one OWL selector issue is still going, which is probably an architecture issue for me. So that could be my user error or a style error or an architecture error for me. But view transitions, that bug is now fixed. Yay, Astro, for always staying on top of your bugs. The community at Astro is amazing. I'm going to demo, but before I do, because I never get to do this before my demo, is I'm going to say that which things never get fixed, because I love to do everything everywhere at once, is the things that haven't ported over. I haven't ported over to Astro yet that I want to is card, or even to solid. I want to do custom MDX components, in particular the custom code block that I have with React Live. I've had to ditch from my site, and I'm really sad about that. I want it to work. And before I do a demo, I haven't been able to do this, but I have to thank every single person of the Astro team that has been helping me with this deck and helping me work through the bugs for my last 3 talks before I do my quick demo to show you a couple of that one bug of the class hoisting. So I want to thank Bryce Guy, Alien, Erica, Kevin, Otter Lord, Sarah, the 2 Sarahs, because you can never go wrong with Sarahs. So Sarah and Sarah 111918, Tony Sol, and Jan. And because they're amazing, they've been helping me with this. So I'm going to go back to my demo. Actually, I'm going to go back to here and then see if I can come back out here, and let me see if I can do it this way. No, I can't. I'm going to get it to here and get to my, let me see if I can get it to there. Hold on. Stand by. Here we go. I'm going to show you a comparison, really quick comparison. Really quick comparison. This is my site at Gatsby. Okay. See the site here. See the gap in my class here. Well, let's go readability, y'all. So here's the site, position, fonts, this particular class, inspect it one more time. Okay, the H1. Where is that class? So there is a class in the header. This article, this particular article, the margin up here, there's this body wrapper, there's this margin up here. But here, notice, look, that drives me bananas. See the slug, it gets hoisted. It's driving me bananas. So I'm gonna try to fix that. And it's because I'm using in every layout, there's some units in here with the OWL selector. There's an OWL selector in global and local styling that you can look in your scale. You can look in every layout to learn about that. So that is something that it only happens when it's deployed. And when I'm using this locally, this does not happen. So I'm trying to figure that out. Anyhow, I'm going to finish to say thank you to the Astro team for rocking this for me. And thank you to you all for listening to my presentation.
Nice. Love it, Kathleen. Is this a video or just a webcam? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Nice. Okay, so thank you for the presentation. We have some questions, and
awesome.
Of course we have many of them. So Ben Holmes answered to some of them, but let's go with those. So, what's your view on Hugo framework? Have you tried it?
I've never used it.
Yeah, me neither. So I heard about this, but I never. But I think that Ben Holmes did. So he gave his point of view. And then we have this one about the Astro Iconify package. Is the one by Nate. I don't know who is him. I'm curious what folks are using for icons these days. Do you know this?
Say again.
I don't know if you can see the question. Like, is the Astro Iconify package that the one by Nate?
I'm gonna look. I gotta look it up. It was like right in one of the ones from right in. It was one of the ones right by the community. So I looked for. Let me see, Astro. Let me look at. I'm gonna look right up. Documentation, resources, integrations. Because it was Iconify. So it was one of the Iconify. So it was one of the two. All right, search. So I grabbed it and then I let me see if it finds it. So it was. Let me see. It was the fork of Astro Icon. So I grabbed. So it was a fork of Astro Icon. Yes, by Nate Mood. Yes.
No, yeah, okay, because he's asking basically which package are you using. Following up question by Jonathan, what third-party packages do you most rely when building with Astro?
You know, my repo is open source.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you can put the link of the GitHub repo in the private chat, I can link it in the the comments because we have an anti-spam.
Oh yeah.
We will share it. We will share it soon. So just put it in the private chat. But
it's my KathleenMcMahon.dev. Actually, is it a separate repo? Let me double check that. Oh, it's my Is it a separate? Let me double check if it's a different repo. It's a different. Let me double check. I will double check. I'm very excited right now. I'm so excited.
But just stay in the chat. We will drop the link soon. So
1 second.
No worries. Nice.
But to be fair, there's still a lot of cruft in my repo because I'm doing a straight conversion from Gatsby to Astro. So I still haven't ripped out some of the Gatsby cruft yet because I am so stubborn that I do not want to pull out the React Live yet, because I do not want to let it go. And so I still have some of the errors in the terminal right now. Like, you don't have Gatsby and MDX embed, it's like I still want the Gatsby MDX embed, or I'm starting to contribute to like the Astro embed, package, because I'm so sick of the Gatsby MDX embed package not being maintained right now. It's driving me bananas. And it's like, if y'all are not going to upgrade that package for everyone that's been begging for the next version of it to be released, for everyone that wants it to support MDX2, so everyone can use it in MDX, like let's either like support it in Astro, or or like allow us to like help you take it over the line. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. I think we have the very last one, and then I'll try to invite Ben. So, does Astro work with Angular? It should. Do you have?
Ben would know. Ben works for Astro.
He's nodding, so yeah. He's saying yes. So since but this is perfect, because since the two talks are connected, I can invite Ben, and maybe we can stay 2 minutes together.
Yes.
So let me invite Ben.
Yes.
So first of all, welcome, Ben. So this was basically makes my life as a host easy, because usually you have to link the two talks. Here, I have nothing to do, so this was perfectly fit. And so yes. Thank you. Nice. So I think that I saw you very active in the chat. Kathleen also answered. So Astro works with Angular. I think we can go. Nice. Okay. Nice, Kathleen. Thank you so much. If you can stay sometime, I can invite you at the end. Otherwise, thank you, and no worries. Okay.
I can stay for a bit. Yes.
Perfect. Bye.
Bye.
Finally, Ben. So I saw you have countless of times, on Twitter. So I saw you do videos, speaker, whiteboards, Astro. But I say, okay, so at some point, I have to reach out to this person, maybe organize a coffee chat. But, sometimes I let the destiny to work for me. So I'm happy that at least we have I invited you here. So super happy to have you here. I love your style. I have a whiteboard in my house, by the way. So probably I can even make one video. So I'm allowed to talk with you. And so Ben, please tell me something about you. Introduce yourself. Then we'll introduce your presentation, and then we'll just get started.
Yeah, totally. So thanks for the super nice introduction. It's good to meet you too, even virtually. But yeah, I'm Ben. I like explaining things on a whiteboard. I'm a full-time maintainer over at Astro. It's cool that you can say that you are a full-time salaried employee that works on open source. It's a rare breed, but we have it going on. And I'm also working on the Studio project. If y'all have ever seen a teaser of Astro Studio in the wild, we're barreling towards a release of that at some point in the future. So get excited for that. That's kind of been the baby that I've been working on for a bit with a few other super talented devs that Kathleen already thanked. But yeah, I'm excited to talk a little bit more about Astro today with the crew out here.
Nice. So I see in your background, let's build. So I think that maybe it's time to build. Ben, what do you think?
Perhaps. Yep. This is an ambitious format. I actually gave a talk at a React Summit about server components from scratch. And I realized it's a lot of fun to just do a bit of live coding. So this one's going to be a little bit rougher probably, but I did want to build something live and see where we end up. Worst case, I can just show y'all the repo at the end. So that's what I'm playing.
Yes. So Ben, I root for you. I hope that the demo goals will be fulfilled today. And let's see. So best of luck. I'll share your screen, of course. Otherwise, it will be even harder. Maybe you can make it anyway. But let's share the screen. Let's try. And yes. So best of luck, and see you in around 30 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
If you need help, just.
All I just
Nice.
have to do is hit get revert, and I'll just be back to the working version.
Exactly.
That's how I set it up. We got fail safes.
Bye.
Yeah.
Best of luck. Bye.
All right. Well, now it's just you and me, audience. Hope y'all are doing well. I didn't get to address you, but if you're out there, you're an Astro user, appreciate you. Thanks for coming out. And if you don't know Astro, well, we're going to build with it today. So you can see on the whiteboard behind me, I have an Astro logo and I also have a Cloudflare logo. That's because I wanted to try building a more, interactive app from scratch. Normally with Astro, you think content sites, you think content collections, Kathleen's demo, migrating over a blog. But now that we have view transitions, and we also have forms, you can do some more interactive stuff with Astro these days. You just need some server rendering and maybe a client framework if that's your thing, and somewhere to host that server. So you can see I already have a config file pulled up here. Probably not the most friendly intro, but this is what we're going to try to build. So I wanted to build a ticketing site, a place where you could see events in your area or something like that, and you could say, I want to buy a ticket. And then it would say, oh, thank you, sir. Here is your ticket that you bought. Maybe add it to your Apple Wallet or something like that. We won't get into actual user authentication or any of the, guts, because those are best left to external libraries, and I have example repos that I'll share out at the end. So our focus is going to be on how do we get this thing on Cloudflare? We're using Cloudflare Workers, which is a way to render content on the edge and also host SQLite databases alongside it. So we're going to be playing with some SQLite. And I have it configured here already. This is a Astro integration that you can try out that's super feature-rich. I happen to know the maintainer, Alex. He's awesome. But you can see I plugged in an adapter here. This is Astro's system to say, where do you want to host the thing? And I want to host it on Cloudflare. And I'm going to use local SQLite when I'm in development. Because the beauty of SQLite is you can host a file yourself. So by flipping this on, we can play with SQLite without having to actually connect to a remote server. We could even go offline if we wanted to. But this is all we need in order to turn Astro into a server. If you say output server, that will turn on server rendering for all of your routes. And you can also pre-render and go back to static whenever you need to. So this is my homepage. If I spin up a dev server to show you all what we have, we can see, first off, we're going to run this. And we're also going to, must provide command or file. Well, that makes sense because our schema is empty at the moment. But I set this up already to first run a little database migration into our local file. This is a Wrangler command in order to do it. And then start up our dev server with that data. So you can see right here I have a SQL file. You could put this wherever you want. You could put an ORM around it. Astro is very flexible in that way. But you can see that I'm just going to add some basic SQLite in here. I wrote this snippet ahead of time to set up some tables so we don't have to play with SQL syntax on stream, but you can see I set up an events table. Maybe we have a name, description, and ticket price, and then a ticket, which is when you've made a purchase, how many did you make, and what's your email, so that we can send you a receipt or something like that. So if we start up the dev server now, that should set up our SQL queries. There we go. And now we've spun up a local SQLite database with these tables. So if we go to our browser, not much is going to happen. In fact, it looks like I have another service running. Let me make sure I kill that and then start up our dev server. Here we are. So if we head over to 4, 3, 2, 1, countdown, we see hello daily.dev. Because right now, we just have a home page and not much else. I'll head over to pages/index. We use page routing. If you've used Next.js, it's exactly like that. And we can see our simple H1 inside of an HTML file, because Astro is just HTML. But we want to query, SQLite or something like that. So let's say we want to redirect you to the first event on the service. We could build a home page, but I want to keep it simple. So I'm going to say that, then I have a little snippet for the DB. This is a beautiful thing in Astro. If you use middleware, you can provide local variables that can intercept requests and give you all sorts of goodies. Since we're using Cloudflare, we have access to our DB from this variable. So this is literally a place that I can query my database. So I can say prepare, for example, to prepare a query. And maybe I want to select some data. So I'll say select star from events. And I don't really care about the ID. I'm just going to grab the first one. So I'm going to say dot first. I'm going to make sure I await that query. It's easy to forget to do that. And now we should be able to, see the first event. Let's log that out as a sanity check here. Console log that event. And we see right here, oh, cool. We have a super cool event, Sampa, live in Brooklyn. Sound off in the chat if you know who Sampa is. He's an amazing freaking artist. He collabed with Kendrick Lamar, and he has an amazing album out right now. I just want to see this man live, so this is my dream show. This is what I hope will happen in Brooklyn at some point. But this is the event, and let's go ahead and redirect, perhaps, to an individual route. So instead of doing this doc type right here, I have a little snippet prepared ahead of time. We could say, redirect us to the first event in the catalog. And we're just going to assume that there's at least one event. So I'm going to do the bang operator to say, hey, TypeScript, trust me, there's an event. All right, cool. So now when we go to the home page, it redirects to the first event, just the path /1. So, all right, we're redirecting to an event. Where does the event live? Well, Kathleen hinted earlier, there are wildcard routes, so we're going to build one here. Let's say wildcard event.astro. An event is going to be the ID that we can pluck off and make a little database query. So let's go ahead and say const event, and let me collapse my file explorer. We're running low on room. But we'll say event is equal to db, and I always forget to type a wait. Let me add that. And we'll say prepare for query. We'll say select star from events. That seems good, where the ID is something. And you can use bind in order to bind in a variable. And this is going to come from Astro params, all of the route parameters we have. We have event, so I'll say that. And then I'm going to find the first one that matches this exact query. And once again, we're going to console log the event as a sanity check to make sure we're actually getting something. If we check that out, hopefully we're getting something. I think we are. So if I refresh that, yep, we're getting something. We're not rendering any content yet, though. So let's go ahead and add a layout here. This, again, is something that I grabbed ahead of time, but this is from the Astro Basics template. So I don't think I'm cheating when I said from scratch. I don't think so. We're almost getting the default. Come on. For whatever reason, Copilot is fighting me right now, and I can't actually select the export. Let me click it. There we go. All right, so auto exports work in our language tooling, by the way. It's a lovely little thing. But we'll say this is our layout, and it accepts a title, which will be put in our head. So let's say it's equal to the event.title. And we don't have type safety because we didn't set up anything for that, so don't worry about that. And let's also redirect maybe to the home page or something like that if there's not an event, just to make sure that it always exists. So we'll say redirect back to the home page if there's no event. Or maybe go to a 404 page. How about that? We'll go to a 404 page. And now we know that there's an event. I'm going to typecast this as a string because trust me, man, if we have an event, it's got something. And inside of this, let's go ahead and render some content. So, we have an event title. First off, so let's make that a big, bold header, and hopefully that pops up. Are we getting anything? What's going on here? Let's refresh that. All right, something's going on because I'm not seeing an event title yet. Oh, it's event name. That's why. All right, classic. All right, that's the event name. Safe Alive in Brooklyn. Woo! And now let's add a paragraph tag with the event description. There we go. And now we want to let you buy tickets, right? So we're going to add a form for this. And we're going to have a couple things in here, perhaps a label for the amount of tickets that we want. Quantity, I can spell. And we'll also say this is for a quantity input. We'll make an input down here. This is just HTML, people. And I'm going to let Copilot carry me. Yeah. Let's say maximum of 5 or something like that. So now we have a quantity input. Cool. And we're also going to do the same for the, how much? Email, yes. We're also going to have the email right here, and Copilot, give me an email. That's a good email. Okay, so now we have some inputs, a form, and our event all rendered on the edge for all of the events in our database. Not bad. But it looks kind of ugly, I'll be honest. So I'm going to use one of my favorite tools right now, and it's not Tailwind. I do like Tailwind. Tailwind's decent. But I'm going to use a little thing called OpenProps. If you haven't heard of this, it's from Adam Argyle, an employee at Google that knows his way around CSS. And he has this cool little default called Normalize that gives you some default styles that look pretty nice for a demo like this one. So you can see it gives you chunky headings, some nice light and dark mode. It actually reads your system defaults and styles it with CSS. Pretty nice. And we get some nice, default text, so you don't have that Times New Roman style. So we'll head back to our event now that we have proper styles. And I'm going to add a couple more styles that I wrote ahead of time. So this is just some styling for the form inputs to make sure it's in a box. It's styled like left and right, just make it look nice. And I also decided ahead of time that display flex is what I want to use for this. So I'm going to add that flex direction column. That's a little bit better. Okay, so now we have a form that doesn't look terrible. Let's go ahead and add our button now. And this will just be, buy, whatever. And I made it orange because we said we're building Eventbrite, so it better be orange. And now let's handle some form submissions. How do you do that in Astro? Well, it gives you access to Astro Request. So you can read that request body however you want to do it. You can think of this like an Express endpoint, but with much nicer templating and ways to insert components like Preact or Vue or React. It's the modern day Express, in my opinion. So you could, for example, check if the method is post, as it says here, and you could read the form data. But I found that gets really wacky over time, especially when you want to have validation. So I built a really fun library for this called Simple Stack Form. This was released as of yesterday, so shameless plug. But you can run Astro add Simple Stack Form. And this will add a third-party package. You can see right there's a little warning, but trust me, I built it. And this will add Simple Stack Form to your project and set it up in your config for you. Very cool. And with that wired up, now we have some middleware to handle form requests. So if we check this out, this is our ticket form, right? You can say await Astro locals, and then inside of here we have form. What is form? Well, it lets you get the data of any form that may or may not be coming down the wire. And you can validate it with Zod, the thing that Kathleen was so excited about earlier. I'm excited too. But you can see, for example, we have a quantity in email, and we want to only accept requests that have quantity as a number or a parsable number, and email as a valid email. It's always good to safeguard these. Don't rely on client-side validation only. It's good to have something for this. So you can call Z, and this comes straight from Astro. You don't even have to import it. And we're going to say quantity is the number, and maybe min and max as well. And email is going to be a string of type email. Cool. So now ticket form will either be undefined if there isn't a form request, or it'll be the parsed form data that you can, check for errors or handle success cases. So that's pretty much it. Now I'm just going to log out ticket form to make sure that it actually shows the correct data. So we can see quantity, ramp that up. Email, I'm going to say hey@bholmes.dev. This is an actual email, so don't spam me, but you can email me. And, okay, we're getting undefined. That might be, I don't know what that would be. Let me make sure of something. Oh, it's probably because we're not using view transitions yet. Probably, I'm not sure. I'm gonna go ahead and make this a string just to be sure it's not me building a bad library. That could totally be. But if we go ahead and do this, quantity, email, and that will do something there. All right, we're still getting undefined. That's actually surprising. So if we do locals, get data, what am I missing? So we have quantity and email. Heck. Oh, method post. I forgot how the browser works. Yeah, we need to make sure that that's a post request, because by default, forms don't do post request. It's kind of silly. I wish they did. But anyways, oh gosh, I minimized. Maximize. Head back over here. And yes, now we get success false, because that was supposed to be a number all along. So let's add that back. Now we should be getting that in email. That's success false because we don't have an email provided. And if we do provide one, that should give us success true down here. Yes, and you can see the data coming through, beautifully parsed, quantity of 3, email bholmes.dev. Nice. So now we have full end-to-end handling of forms. But you did notice that little page refresh, right? You saw the page refresh there. What year is this? 1995? Is this PHP? Nah, we have modern technology. Let's go ahead and prevent page refreshes, but still use all of the same code. That's the power of view transitions. Let me show you this. So view transitions is something that was added as of, I think, Astro 3.0, and it is a way to avoid fully refreshing the page when new content comes down the wire, either from a form request or a route change. And instead, it's going to diff one page from another and give you access to the View Transitions API to animate elements between the page if you so choose. We're not going to do any fun animations today. I'll leave that to you. But we're going to use this to handle form requests. You can see handle forms is an opt-in right now. There's going to be a default in Astro, where if you have view transitions inside of the page, it's going to handle any form request and do a hot reload instead of fully refreshing the page. So let me show you what that looks like. If we go ahead and do this, and then again, we submit an email, we can see a beautiful fade animation from our current state to the server rendered state. Now, of course, we're not doing anything, so the input's just kind of faded away. But you can imagine, once we add like success banners and stuff like that, we can make this really nice. And also, I shouldn't have said hot reload. That's not what I meant. Hot reloading is like a dev server thing. I should have said hot swap or something like that. You can call it whatever hotness you want. I think it looks pretty good. But just know it's going to diff one page from another and change the parts that actually changed. All right, so we have handling for a ticket form. Let's go ahead and show maybe a success banner with your ticket if it's successful, and some error banners if it's not. So Zod is a bit finicky with handling errors. I wrote a snippet ahead of time because it's ugly. I want to make an API simpler than this. But for now, in Zod, you check, was it not successful? Okay, let's go ahead and grab the field errors, which is this deeply nested object. Expect in a future version of my fun library for this to be easier to grab. But this is how you grab your errors. And you can see they're type safe, and it's going to be a list of strings. And you can say, if there's an error, go ahead and show an error, and we're going to render out the errors joined up. In case there's multiple, I'm just going to put them all on one line. And I think, I added a little error styling to make sure it's a nice red banner. So, for example, if quantity is an invalid number, like you went in there, you opened your DevTools, you changed it to a text input, and it doesn't work anymore, well, we're going to reject you and give you a field error. And we'll do the same for email. This is going to look like the same block of code with one swapped for another. So we're going to say email down there, and that should be everything we need. So now if I add a quantity and an email, we can see it fades to the new state, and invalid email suddenly appears. Pretty cool. So what about success states, though? What if we actually submitted a good quantity in email? Let's go ahead and handle that by saying ticket form successful. All right. Well, let's write it to the database first. So I'm going to go to my DB and prepare a query. This will be, insert into tickets. That feels right, with the event ID and all of that. And then we'll bind up the Astro Params event. This is perfect. Exactly. The problem is I typed this earlier, so Copilot really knows what I'm about to do. But that's okay. So we can see here we're plucking off the event from the URL, and the data is going to be this type-safe body with the quantity and the email, because it ran through validation successfully. Pretty cool. So now that we have all that set up, we have database rights. And down here, I'm going to check if you have a ticket purchase. So we could, take the return value and show it inside of this if block, but I'm going to run another database query like that. Dang it, Copilot, you're taking all the fun away. But that's it, yeah. If you have tickets purchased, it's going to prepare a query to tickets where the event ID is that, and it will show you all of your ticket sales. And maybe we just want to take the first one and handle overwrites because you're probably buying a batch of tickets just for your account, assuming we had users or something like that. So let's say this is the ticket. This is going to have the purchase that you made, and we'll show it at the bottom here. So we'll say, if there's a ticket, show something, and otherwise show nothing. Down here, we'll go ahead and say, you have this quantity of tickets for the event, and I don't think there's going to be a ticket quantity. I think it's, there is a ticket quantity. Oh, this is smart. Copilot's even thinking ahead to how we could probably parse this. Let's go ahead and do that. You have this many tickets for this event. Pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and do a submission to see if that works. If we do that, you have 4 tickets for this event. And if we refresh the page, that's persisted in the database. So if I refresh, we still see that we have 4 tickets for the event. Nice. So the last thing probably is to add a little client interactivity. We've been doing all of this with server rendering. And that's the beautiful thing about Astro. It's so easy to template with a JSXy syntax that you don't need client-side JavaScript a whole lot. But one thing I would like to do is have the price display for the ticket. I don't know how much I'm paying for this thing. Ideally, it would show me the price and update the price as I update the quantity. So we want to update one input based on another. And that requires some client-side JavaScript, unless you want to send a billion network requests every time you update an input. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like something I want to do. So let's add Preact to this project. Again, you can do this by running Astro add and the name of your extension. I'm going to add Preact, which is one of the component frameworks that we support. You can also use standard React, or you could use Qwik, which is now supported. I hope Misko talks about that after ours, because I'm very fascinated. But I'm just going to use Preact because I know my way around a JSX component. So let's add Preact to the project. And you can see no need to restart the dev server. You can just install dependencies, update your config, and it keeps running. I haven't restarted our dev server at all. Little show-off moment. But yeah, let me add a component for this. This is going to be price.tsx. We support TypeScript out of the box. You don't have to configure anything. So let's say component. This is going to be a price component. And we're going to keep track of the quantity. So we'll say quantity, set, quantity, use state, started at 1. That feels right to me. And we're going to import that from Preact. Cool. And you could also use React for this. It's just a different import for the same thing, but ships a lot less JavaScript. So why not? Why not do that? And because we're JSX compliant, I can just copy this code. So I'm going to copy the quantity input. That way we can keep track of it with some client-side state. So now our quantity is going to be rendered inside of Preact with server rendering. And I'm going to add a little input up here for price. So I'm going to say price. And the price is going to be whatever price we have from the server. So the price is going to come down from the server. That's a set number. And we're going to re-render it every time quantity changes. So we'll say price times quantity. Simple grade school math. And last thing we have to do is bind this. So if we were using Svelte, I would just say bind and be done. But sadly, I'm using the boring framework. So we're going to say E. And come on, Copilot, just write it for me. Thank you. That thing. So set quantity based on the integer. And we'll also set a default value for this to set it to the starting quantity, which is just 1. That'll do. And I think you have to make it a string. All right, so now we have an interactive component that'll update the price. And to render a component in an Astro template, it's just another component. There's nothing else you have to do. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to replace it with price quantity, or what was it? Just price? Yeah, and it looks like my editor tooling is not helping me. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Nearly. Okay. So now we've imported price just like any other component. I'll say client load, and this opts into client-side JavaScript. By default, it's just going to be another server templating language. And we're going to send down the price, which is equal to the event price. Nice. Okay. And it's nan, because I think it was called ticket underscore price. Is that it? Yeah, nice. Okay, so, we also have to divide it by 100 because I'm storing things the way you normally would in a database. Oh, well. But yeah, now we have 100, and you can see when I update this, it updates with client-side JavaScript. Wow. It's like a counter example, but a little bit more useful. So there we go. Now we've added just an island of interactivity, and we're not hydrating the whole page with React in order to achieve this. We're just shipping Preact, a smaller bundle, to re-render this quantity and price, to tie these together. And everything else on the page is going to still be server rendered, including the form submission. So even though we did this, it's going to preserve everything. So if I do this, and I should probably restart the server to empty out my database because we're only getting the first value. So let me restart it just so we start from a fresh slate. Very nice. And we can see that as it updates, it's going to refresh. You have 4 tickets for this event. Cool. And if you don't want quantity to reset, just one little nugget that I want to leave you with. You can also say transition persist. This is a really cool directive that says whenever there's a navigation, I actually want this bit of HTML to preserve itself. I don't want to re-render this chunk of the page. So everything else is going to re-render, but this price component is going to persist between submissions. So say I want quantity to stay where it is, stay locked, But when I do this, I want everything else to change. So now you can see the UI updated, but the quantity input was preserved. This is a great way to preserve inputs as well. Have you ever dealt with, like, you submit a form, you have field errors, and it resets all of the inputs, and you're like, oh my god, dude, it was off by 1 character. Please put it back. That's what transition persist is for. You can put this sauce on any, HTML element, like an input. Maybe you put it on a video that you want to keep playing as you navigate around the site. You can use it for anything on the page that you don't want to re-render. So I used it here just as a demo, but there's a lot of fun use cases for it that I've been exploring. So that's it. I'm surprised we actually got the whole thing built, but we did. If you want to try this out yourself, there is a GitHub repository. Always be open sourcing. If you go to bholmesdev / what did I call this thing? I think it was called Eventbrite from scratch. Yes. If you want to check out the repo, it's over there. And it's also pretty easy to deploy this thing to Cloudflare Workers if you're ever interested. So I shared that in the YouTube chat, and it errored out. I've been having this problem. Let me put it on this page. All right, you can find it on my profile, Eventbrite from scratch. I'm bholmesdev everywhere, but this is the name of the project. And this has all the code you need to try out Cloudflare, Preact, whatever else. I recommend you go look at it. Otherwise, I mean, this is the end of my talk. So thank you all so much for joining.
Wow, that was really an amazing demo. I think the peak we had on the failed method post, that was the peak of the demo.
I love form posts.
Yes, so we have a way to remove links. But I'll put it. So if you put it in the private chat, too, because I know that people are too lazy to go on GitHub and type Eventbrite - from the slash. So I know we know each other. So Ben, really amazing. I think this is the second time that I see an Astro demo, like in person, like during a presentation. The first one, it was from my Eddie Vink. I don't know if you know him, but like he made the presentation about Astro. So yes, it was really, really great presentation. It worked. I loved even the flow, let's say, of the whole thing. Really amazing. If you have any question, you can drop it. Otherwise, we'll just go to Misko. I don't think we have any specific question. Maybe there was one. There was mostly people trolling more than questions, we can say. Yeah. So mostly trolling things. Like there was Jonathan very happy, and I think we had something about like hot reload. And yes, this one, of course. So someone maybe they want to do a billion network requests. So nothing. We are not here to judge you. So it's okay.
It's cool.
Yes. So let's keep the trolling going, and let's see what's your favorite Sanfa song?
I don't think that's a troll. That's the question I wanted. So if y'all don't know, his new album Lahai is what it's called. Some hits on there. I would probably say Suspended is my favorite off of that one. Nice. But I'm curious if you have an answer.
Nice. So now we can say that this has been sponsored by Sanfa. Now that we're here, like watching the whole thing, the whole demo. So this whole demo has been sponsored, let's say, by Sanfa. So now you can say it. Nice. So thank you so much, Ben. Maybe we can keep in touch because I want to do maybe something. If you want to do some collaboration, so I'm starting to dig in your YouTube channel and all the other stuff. So thank you so much. It was really a great demo, like really hands-on demo. Really love that. Kudos. Thank you so much. If you can stay 30 more minutes, then I'll invite you again. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time. I loved the whiteboard, the thing, green screen, and all the other stuff. Nice. Perfect. I think we can close on this one.
Oh boy.
Nice.
There's some stuff coming is all I'll say. I've got a library for partial rendering in Astro.
Perfect.
So we will be hitting those use cases.
Nice. Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Bye. Let me remove these. Okay, last but absolutely not least. So finally, Misko, we made it. I remember that in Croatia in 2022, we said we need to do some collaboration. It's November 2023. I think it's time because we have been kind of busy. We met multiple times, like three times, at least three times. I mean, so in Poland 2022, Croatia 2022, and in Berlin 2023. I remember you were there like right before maybe my talk. So it's I hope yours went well. But yeah, we took the Uber together. So Misko, let's get started. So please introduce yourself for the few people who don't know you, and then you can share your screen and we can get started. Or let me know what you want to do.
You can share the screen whatever you feel like. Okay. Nice. So hi, I'm Misko. I did this thing called AngularJS, Angular, and now I am a CTO of a company called Builder.io, and Builder.io makes a headless visual CMS. Basically, think Wix, but one that you can npm install, not one that you have to host with Wix. So you can have your own infrastructure for hosting, your own way of writing code, your own components, everything. And I just want to basically allow your marketing folks to not bug you about every single tiny little detail, like when they should publish things and things that are of that sort. So you can npm install a drag and drop editor and you can drop it into it. Now, the thing that I'm really passionate about is making web fast, right? And I think that's what we're going to talk about here today is how do you make web fast? And, one of the things that is getting super popular is this island architecture. And so the question then you should be asking yourself, like, well, why island architecture? What does the island architecture kind of give you? And the answer to that question, I think, is that maybe, can you share my screen? I can kind of show a couple of things.
Do you want me to stay or do you want to be?
Yeah, you can stay, you can leave, whatever works comfortable.
I'll stay two more minutes.
Okay, and then you can
because it's too interesting. Love the
By the way, I always start my presentations with a dad joke, so I cannot skip it. This is my perfect opportunity. Captive audience, they have no choice; they have to listen. So why do functions, or how do functions break up? They stop calling each other. No? Okay, we'll move on.
I know because I witnessed some of those live, so it's hard. It's harder to keep a straight face. Yeah.
All right. So we're talking about island architectures, right? And the question we should be asking yourself is like, why is this resurgence of island architectures? And what I want to show you is this awesome website called HTTP Archive. And what HTTP Archive basically shows is Google has this thing called Core Web Vitals, where they instrument the browser and they see how well different technologies perform. And then they send this information anonymously to Google, and then you can kind of go check it out on this HTTP Archive and see how different technologies perform. And so I kind of collected the usual suspects: Next.js, Angular, Nux, SvelteKit, Astro, Remix, and Qwik. And I kind of lined them up. And this shows the percentage of websites that have a good score or good performance. And the thing I want to kind of show you about this is, that the technology you choose kind of does have a bit of a prediction into the performance of your website that you will have. And specifically, they want to show you is this graph right here. So this is a lighthouse. So the difference between a lighthouse and a Core Web Vitals is this is actual user collected behavior. So this, you cannot cheat on this, right? Because this is actually what the user is experiencing when they visit your website, because they're using Chrome, and Chrome is instrumented to collect this information. Lighthouse is a prediction of how Google thinks you will do based on what they can see. And these numbers, or these charts right here, correlate really, really well with these numbers over here. So notice things that are high here and low here are also things that are high in this particular thing and low over here as well. Now, the thing I want to show you that I think really kind of drives the point home is this thing. This shows the amount of JavaScript that we send with a particular technology to the browser. And what I specifically want to show you is that this graph right here is essentially the inverse of the graph over here. In other words, things that don't score very well here actually have a lot of JavaScript, and things that score really well on this side have very little JavaScript. And this kind of should make intuitive sense, because what you're saying is, hey, the more JavaScript I send to the browser, the more JavaScript the browser has to go and execute, and therefore the slower the startup performance. And I think the reason why things like Astro and 11p and Qwik are gaining popularity is because people are really starting to catch on to this fact, is that like, hey, we're just sending way too much stuff to the client, and that's having a negative impact. I'm sure you have all visited a website where there's a buy button, you want to click on it, and it just doesn't work for several seconds. So you click on it once, click on it a second times, you don't know, did I misclick? Is it not working? What's going on? And eventually that button starts working and you add an item to a shopping cart. And that is not a good user experience. And not only is it not a good user experience, it actually produces a negative outcome for the company. So if you have two identical websites that sell the same exact thing, the one that performs better will actually have higher sales. And it kind of makes sense, because if the buy button and you're clicking on it isn't working, at some point you just abandon this particular task and you go do something else. And so, ability to sell or to people is really about like, hey, I want to make sure the steps you have to go through in order to make a purchase is as low as possible. And it doesn't have to be purchase. It could be, signing up for a newsletter or anything else that we have as a goal inside of the business world. And so we want to make this performance as good as possible. And so once you realize that the performance of your website is really determined by the amount of JavaScript you're sending to the website, then the next obvious thing would be like, well, how do I decrease the amount of JavaScript? What can I do about it? And I think this is where Astro comes in and kind of really sends the message really, really clearly, which is that, hey, how about we recognize the fact that most of our website is actually static. It never has to re-render on the client. If you go to a page such as Amazon has a product over there and there's a buy button, and maybe you can look at it from different angles, but for the most part the page is pretty static. There is not much you can do on this particular page, and the only thing that you want to be able to have interactive is maybe the menu system, the shopping cart, maybe the angle which you are looking at on a product that needs to be interactive, but really everything else on a page should be just server-side rendered, and you shouldn't have to send JavaScript to the client for it. And so islands basically give you that ability. They basically say, hey, I can mark a boundary and say, hey, this is the only piece of code that really matters. Everything else should just be server-side rendered. And I think Ben made a good example of that in his presentation, where he said like, hey, I was able to do all of these things without any sort of JavaScript on the client. And at some point, we needed JavaScript. And so, we installed a client-side render framework, and installing the client-side render framework gave us the ability to now have this interactivity, but we only focused it on a particular small part, not on the whole page, just on a small part. Now, I think approaches like Astro are great, but they do require that a developer basically is participating in it in the form of like, hey, the developer has to set up, the boundaries and where things work and so on and so forth. And so what I want to show you is a kind of a slightly different take on this, which is Qwik. And Qwik's idea is that you as a developer don't have to think about where the boundaries are. Instead, all of these things get automatically created. So for that, I'm going to show you a little demo. So here is a page, typical page that has kind of a behavior. So let's look at the behavior. There's a shopping cart. Currently, shopping cart shows no items. There's 0 on it. And maybe I can click on the button right here. And when I do, it says hello in the console. I have buttons to increment or decrement. Maybe these are the quantities. When I hit the buy button here, notice that the count has incremented over here. If I click it multiple times, I have multiple items in it. I can go and expand and I see what's in a shopping cart. And of course, there's a clock on the bottom to kind of go and show what time it is. Now, the thing I want to show you is that this page is very interactive. There's many things I can do as a developer, as an end user. And so naturally, you would think that all of these things would have to be downloaded eagerly. And so this is where the island architecture comes in and says like, well, maybe we can have an island around the shopping cart. Maybe we can have an island around the buy button, maybe just an island around here. And, we could do all of these things. But with Qwik, you don't have to do any of those decisions. Instead, all those decisions are kind of done automatically without any sort of effort for you. So the thing I want to show you is, let's go to the network tab, right? I'm kind of convincing you that it's all about the amount of JavaScript that's being downloaded to the client. So if we go to the network tab, this is a dev mode. So I told system, don't show me Vite because Vite doesn't exist in production. It will disappear. What I want to show you is, notice there is no JavaScript present. And when I go and I interact with a particular component, it is only at that point that a JavaScript shows up. Now, specifically, if I click on this thing, what I really want to show you is that we didn't send the whole JavaScript. We really only sent the JavaScript required for this particular operation and nothing else. So if I go and click the plus, we will get the code that increments the value. We will get the framework, and this build system will be that will disappear once the production is there. But we won't get anything else on the page. Similarly, if I click the buy button, notice the code for the buy button shows up. The code for the cart container to re-render the page shows up, but nothing else shows up on the page. And finally, if I get the clock into position, you can see that the clock component, its code shows up when it becomes visible, right? And because of this staggered approach of like not overwhelming the browser all at once with JavaScript, instead saying like, hey, we're only going to ship code to you as needed. Qwik websites have have a really good performance because, well, we're not overwhelming me with JavaScript, but at the same time, as a developer, I don't have to do any extra work to think about like, well, how do I create the boundaries? Where do I create them? How do I make the islands? How do I communicate between islands? I'm going to talk about it in a second. So you have a much, much simpler kind of life. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, so when I go and I click on this particular button, let's say I navigate to a particular page and the network disappears. Now, when I click on this button, this code cannot download. So I'm going to show you how things work in production. In production, they work a little bit different. So let's go to, this is an incognito tab. So this is the first time we're going to navigate to a page, and I'm going to open up a tab, go to the network tab, see that we have JavaScript in here. And specifically, I'm only going to be interested in the Q code. This is the code that is specific to the framework itself. And so let's navigate to our website. And once we navigate to a website, I am going to pretend that I lost the network. I'm going to go offline, right? You can see that some of the code already downloaded eagerly because we need some of the code for whether you have the light or dark theme. But this menu over here, that's a different code. So notice when I start interacting with the menu, more code shows up. But wait a minute, we're offline. What's going on over here? How can we have a interactivity even though we're offline? In other words, we have no network. And that's because if you look at it, the code that shows up is coming from the service worker. That's going to be one giveaway. The other giveaway is that if you notice, the amount of time it takes to respond for these things is super, super low. That's because even though it looks like HTTP request, it's actually going into the browser's cache. So what happens when you navigate to a particular page, if you go to the application, we're going to have a cache. And notice this cache is pre-populated with all of the relevant code that is needed to make this page interactive. So the way it actually works is that you navigate to a page in production. In the background, we start downloading all of the relevant code that you might need, but the main thread doesn't get any code eagerly. Instead, the main thread just waits for interactivity. When the interactivity actually shows up, then we make a request for the code, but it's a cache hit. And so whether the network has disappeared or it's a slow network, etc., it doesn't matter. The page is actually extremely performant. And so now the question then you might be asking yourself, well, how do we know which particular code to download and when? And for that, we have something called Qwik Insights. So when you're running the application, the system collects information about different pieces of code, and each piece of code has an ID. And so what this particular thing, this chart, which we call a correlation matrix, shows is what is the probability that you need, given one piece of code, what is the probability that you're going to need a second piece of code, right? And so in this particular case, it says like, if you go and interact with this particular function, there's a 49% chance that you're also going to need this other piece of code as well. And you can see as I move around, the probabilities change, right? So for example, this one is 100%, meaning like if you're going to need this code, you're also going to need this other code as well. And so using this correlation matrix, what we're going to do is we're going to create bundles. In other words, we're going to say a bundle, and it looks like this bundle has to do with the hamburger menu in the left-hand corner. And the system basically noticed like, hey, all of this code is always needed together. So what we should do is we should make sure that the code is in the same bundle. And so the system is suggesting that you make one bundle that contains all of this code, make a second bundle which contains this other code, make a third bundle which contains this other piece of code, etc., etc. And once you collect all of this information, the next thing we can collect is for a particular route, which particular code is needed, and this is a time distribution, right? So this piece of code is needed very, very early in the application lifecycle. This is because some code needs to run to figure out whether you're in the dark theme or light theme. And as you go and interact, you can see that these things become slower, that can become shifted. And these are different interactions that have to do with, for example, for user's choice. So this is a on mouse move event, and looks like the users go and interact with that particular thing much, much later, which makes kind of sense. And what this information is then used is that it's fed into the service worker right here. This, so it's not the party home. This service worker right here, so that the service worker can pre-cache all of the files in the correct order, meaning that the order in the probability that you will actually need them as a developer. Right. So let me show you how well this works. So let's go to here. Let's delete the piece of code here, and let's go to the service worker. I'm going to unregister the service workers as well. And let's go to the network tab. And this time, instead of offline, let's go to a slow 3G. And I want to show you when I go and click, as soon as this particular thing shows up, I can click on it and it immediately becomes interactive. Notice that even on slow networks, the system can prioritize the right pieces of code. Even though the application is complicated, there's many different things you could interact with. The system knows is that like you are most likely to click here, and therefore I will download this piece of code before I download everything else. But also, if you click on it before the system downloads, it can then prioritize and say, okay, I'm going to make sure that this code downloads before everything else needs to be downloaded. Anyways, that's a bit of a sidetrack that I wanted to take you on. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the system is designed in a way where it delay loads as much as possible, right? Which is exactly what island architecture is about. Island architecture is about recognizing the fact like, hey, you don't need all of the code all at once. Can we figure out ways to kind of delay load it for you so that we don't overwhelm the browser? Qwik just takes this to an absolute extreme and says, hey, it's not just about components, it's not about islands, it's about individual functions that exist in the system. And then let's download those functions on as needed basis in a statistical priority order that we can learn from the system, etc. Now, I want to show you this particular example because I think it kind of makes a point. So here is a buy button, right? What the buy button has to do is has to update the shopping cart. So the way this is done is if the buy button is far away from the shopping cart, which typically is the case, that means the topmost component that shares both the shopping cart and the buy button has to contain the state. So if you look at the source code associated with it, this is the topmost component. And here we're declaring a state for a particular component. Let's actually create a default sample item in here, just kind of prove the point. And we take this cart, and then we pass it down to both the cart subcomponent as well as to a shop, which in turn passes it down to the button that does the on-click. Now, the reason I want to show you this is because now the state is actually shared between the shop, between the top-level component, and between the cart. And that means that if you wanted to have an island here and island here, you would have to come up with some inter-island communication mechanism. And Astro has something called the nanostores. But the thing I want to point out about it is that it's, we already have a mechanism for inter-island communication. The inter-island communication allows you to, intercomponent communication, we already have this, right? This is just a regular way as we're working with code, is that we are passing, we create a state and we pass the state around. But you can't pass the state through the islands. And so in the inter-island communication using nanostores, you have to have a different things. Yes?
Sorry, Misko. I don't know if you are sharing the right screen. Were you sharing something? Because maybe you were talking about...
it doesn't update. What? That is so weird.
Because someone said weird.
Okay. Wait, hold on.
If you need 5 more minutes, no worries.
But no. Let's see. What is going on here? I want to... because I pushed the wrong button. I do not know how to use a computer. Apparently. I'm going to try this again.
It's okay, Misko.
Here is the code. And now it shows. All right.
Okay. No, take if you take 5 more minutes ago, we're 1 hour and a half.
Let's back up. Let's back up. The point I was trying to make is that you have a store right here, and this store
Misko, you are muted. I don't know why. I see the okay. now I can hear you. Bye.
All right, let's try this for the third time. No, really, I do know how to use a computer. Okay, so in a situation like here, where you have a body button and a shopping cart, you need to share the state. You need to create a common store, right? And this store, we already have a mechanism within frameworks to do this, and it's basically just a regular state. And when you pass the state down, for example, inside of the cart, the state inside of the cart is, let's see, it's being used inside of the length. We show the items, and then inside of the cart content, we render individual items, right? So this is normal way of passing state. Similarly, if you go to the other path, which is the shop, in the shop, we have a buy button that adds items to the state. The reason I'm explaining this is because that means that now you cannot really have a separate islands, because islands require them to talk to each other. And so this becomes an inter-island communication problem. And so the way this would be solved in something like Astro is you would use something like nanostores. Now, I don't want to go into deep into it, but my only point is that nanostores is a different. Did I stop sharing the screen?
You did. I don't know what happened.
I didn't do anything.
No, this time I saw you did nothing. So at this point, I don't know.
All right. So my point is that the inter-island communication requires a different API, different syntax, different thing that we're used to, and a different way of communication. So that makes it more difficult to kind of refactor things around. And the reason I'm kind of saying this is that you really want the system to figure this out for you. You don't want to manually having to do all of these pieces of things. You really just want to write your applications the way you are thinking about it, and you want the system to kind of figure out. Now, what is interesting in this particular case, let's hit the buy button in here. So let me refresh the particular page. Let's go to the JavaScript. If I hit the buy button, the code that downloads is the code that pushes item into the shopping cart, right? Well, that's kind of obvious. Like, we have to download this particular piece of code in here. What I want to point out is what we didn't download is actually the component itself. So this code didn't download. Really, the relevant bit of code, which is right here, downloaded. So we were able to extract just the listener and nothing else. So this is a function level thing, not a component level thing. Now, the next thing is the framework had to download itself. Again, this build file disappears. And finally, the thing that we downloaded would be the JSX associated with the shopping cart, right? Because the shopping cart had to re-render. So in this particular case, the JSX is basically this thing right here. You can see menu P4 W80. That's right here, over here. And so what didn't download is actually the parent component for the cart, or the root component that shares both the store and the cart. And I think this kind of gets at the core of the problem, right? As a developer, I don't want to think about these things. As a developer, I really just want to be able to write my code as I naturally see fit. And I want the system to figure out how to do all of these things. And so an island architecture is when the developer manually breaks the application up. But I think the ultimate goal is something like Qwik, where the breakup happens automatically with zero effort. And more specifically, the breakup isn't about components, but rather about the functions that these components have, right? So yes, there's a component that renders the travel mug, but wait a minute, this travel mug never ever has to re-render on the client. So really the only code I want is just the buy button, not the whole mug rendering as well. And so that's kind of what the goal of Qwik is. Now, as I said, we also have a integration with Astro, so you can use Qwik with Astro if you want to kind of try different things. And one of the interesting things about it is we always say that Qwik doesn't have hydration. Hydration is the step where the framework boots up, and during the boot up process of the framework goes and executes all the components. And by executing all the components, this is kind of where these performance issues come from, right? So if I go back here, and you can see all of these things, what this is really saying is that the more code you execute, the slower the startup is. And Qwik's point is like, hey, how about we don't execute any sort of code on startup at all? We basically don't have hydration. And I really like this because in Astro, when you use Qwik with Astro has a directive that you put on a island, and you say this island should hydrate under these circumstances. And when you use Astro with Qwik, you actually don't put the directive at all. You basically say this thing doesn't hydrate ever, and yet the pages are fully interactive and can do all of this magic. Anyways, hopefully I kind of made a point, and if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Nice, Misko. So before I get a couple of questions, kudos, because with all the technical issues, you are really unstoppable. So this really shows
thank you, man. I love you too.
So we had some questions. They were during the talk, so I didn't want to interrupt. I don't know if we can get what this about. It was 5 minutes ago, 6 minutes ago. Regular way events, CMA, module object persistence.
I think I can take a crack at this. I think I know. So if you think about it, in order to make this work, right, here is a card. And the card creates a state in the system. But if you think about it, this code right here never actually makes it to the client, right? Let me refresh this again. If I hit the buy button, I've downloaded the piece of code that loads the listener. I downloaded the framework, and I downloaded the piece of code that re-renders the card. But what I didn't download is this piece of code over here. And so the question then becomes like, well, how did the system know that there was a sample item inside of it already? And the answer is because whenever you have a $, let me go and show you here. Whenever there's a $sign right here, like over the click listener, the system captures or serializes any variable that is present. In this case, the variable that needs to serialize is the cart, because this cart is what's being passed in. And so the serialization happens right here inside of this object. And inside of this object, we serialize that information. So somewhere in here, I can't find it right off the bat, but here's a quantity. Here we go, name, quantity, one, etc. This is the serialization of the cart. So when the user goes and interacts with this particular button, notice we have to recover the cart. And by recovering the cart from the serialized state, we get to skip executing that piece of code, right? So the whole system is set up about, hey, I don't want to re-execute code, because re-execution of the code means I have to download the code and run it. And the running part is really tricky, because people say like, oh, well, but running isn't really that expensive. Look at all these performance benchmarks. Well, wait a minute. Those performance benchmarks are performance after the jitter warms up, right? The first time the system runs, you are nowhere close to the performance of all these benchmarks that are telling you how performant the system really is. You're really running in interpretive mode, and you're running in a much, much, much slower performance. And so if you can avoid executing the code, you can really do you can really get the performance up, right? And I really want to drive this point home, which is that to make any website performant, all you have to do is remove JavaScript, right? It might sound crazy, but really this is what it comes down to. It's just JavaScript, right? And so the name of the game should really be, how do we intelligently not overwhelm the browser, right? Because if I remove JavaScript, I'm also removing interactivity. And so I don't want to have a system which is not interactive. That's not really sexy. Nobody wants to use a page like that. I do want interactivity. I just don't want to overwhelm the browser. And the way most systems do this is through a process called hydration. And hydration requires eager download and execution. And then all of these problems are created. And that's why we have all this discussion about like iron architecture, progressive hydration, whatever the latest buzzwords are in a system. And instead, what we should be focusing is on, hey, how about we just don't do hydration, right? Remove that step altogether, and then the problem just goes away.
Nice. Love it, Misko. So I think we went at some conferences together, but I never had time to attend some parts. I don't know if maybe we
I will
chatted
forgive you.
Yeah, no, of course. But no, because but it was nice. It was nice. Very good explanation. Even for a DevOps guy like me, I still appreciate this front end, let's say, optimization. I really love it. Nice. So we are 10 minutes overrun. So I'm sorry, but we had a couple of technical issues. It's absolutely fine. My fault. So let's invite back the speakers. Catherine and Ben, if they are still there. Let's see. Ben is here. Catherine, nice. Okay, so this is one of the times when all the speakers, they stay until the end. So this really made my day. Thank you so much, Catherine and Ben, of course, and Misko. So if you have anything, now you can drop in the chat. You can drop all your compliments and all that stuff. Basically today I did nothing because all the three talks, they were connected to each other. So Catherine introduced Ben introduced Misko. So basically I did nothing in this one. That's it. So thank you. And if you have still something, do you have any final word maybe on the island architecture, on the main topic, if you want to give some final words, and then we can, I think, close this November's event. Do you have something else that you want to say?
I just want to say I am so happy to be here. Kathleen, Ben, Francesco, you guys all rock. I've seen you all everywhere, and I just have love for you. So thank you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's mutual, and we're all team ship less JavaScript. So if I'm going to leave,
yes, team ship less JavaScript. I really want to stress this out.
Nice. Less JavaScript, less pain, I would say.
Well, but you have to have a very fine line between saying there are people out there who basically say don't ship any JavaScript ever, right? And I don't think that's realistic.
We're
right?
not that.
That's just not realistic. And so I really want to point out is that look, you're gonna build your app using JavaScript. That's just here to stay. This isn't changing, right? But let's not overwhelm the browser the way we do it today. And there are lots of strategies out there. Astro really has pioneered this and really been pushing hard on the fact hey, it's all about the JavaScript, stupid, right? Just don't ship the JavaScript and you'll be okay. But then, there needs to be a escape hatch of saying but I need interactivity. What do I do in the case of interactivity? Right? And I think Astro and Qwik are two extremes, right? Astro says, how can I do this without breaking the world, right? Without creating a brand new framework? Can I reuse as much of the system as is possible? And there is value to that. And Qwik basically says well, what if there is no constraints? What if I can do anything I want? Where could I take the world? And so that's the other extreme, right? And sometimes what you want is just absolute brand new, start the world from scratch. And sometimes the answer is well, yes, but I can't afford to because constraints. And so I want to reuse as much of the existing world as you want. And so you have two very different approaches, but the goal is the same, but they're going at it in extremely different ways.
Nice. Love it. Thank you, Misko. Thank you, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming here. And this is we have the next event in 3 weeks, and we'll be done in 2023. It's mind blowing. I still remember the first episode of the year. So we have been doing this monthly event for 35 months in a row. So the next one will be 3 years in a row. So the monthly dev. I've been at the host for the last 2 years, and we're trying to bring all the top class speakers. So really, thank you. We really appreciate it. It's also a way for me also to introduce some people, know some new people. So amazing. Really love that. Again, if we want, you can just subscribe to the channel because we have a new one next month. All the events are free. The only thing that we do, this is sponsored, let's say, by daily.dev. So basically we are putting some effort into this. And yes, so that's it. If you want, you can just check daily.dev and we are done. Nothing much else to say. Everything is for free, of course. Nice. We're done. I call my day. I don't know what's the time over there, but it's almost 7 p.m. here. I woke up at 4, so I think it's basically midnight for me. So I think I'll go to sleep now. So thank you so much. And yes, see you in 3 weeks. So we have the last episode a bit earlier, so you can also celebrate the holidays if you want at the end of December. Thank you. Best of luck. Thank you so much, and everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.